While he was still a student, the young James Joyce paid a visit to W.B. Yeats, and he read his poems aloud to the great man. Yeats, who was by then probably the most famous poet in the language, listened most politely and attentively, but suddenly Joyce broke it off and said, "It's too late, you're too old. I have come too late to help you." I think behind the insolence Joyce was making a rather good point. Yeats was born in 1865. He was old enough to believe in epic values, in the hero, in romantic sincerity. Joyce was born in 1882, and that made him part of a generation that would be 18 in the year 1900, shock troops of modernity. He became a questioner of epic value, he became a believer in the anti-heroic, and he was an exponent of authenticity rather than sincerity. He believed the self was multiple and fragmented. Yeats was always extremely shy of the human body. A boy visiting him in Sligo once explained to him the mechanism of sex, and Yeats admitted that he almost fainted, fell to the floor. He said afterwards, by way of apology, that it was because the boy's description was devoid of any kind of emotion. Yeats, as a lad in Sligo, would listen to his mother complaining about the behaviour of English tourists in the local railway station and kissing with a total lack of reserve. It's an irony of history that it was in another railway station in Kent in England that at the age of 29 Yeats had his own first serious kiss when he was seduced by the intellectual Olivia Shakespeare. "I do not think I knew any way of kissing," Yeats recalled, "for when she first on that railway journey together gave me the long passionate kiss of love, I was startled and not a little shocked." Now, a couple of years after that, the anything but shy teenage Joyce was making the first of many visits to the Dublin brothels, an experience which you could say combined precociousness with cynicism. And he would boast about these exploits to his brother Stanny, who came to the conclusion that Irish men were interested in women only as streetwalkers or housekeepers. By the time he was in his mid-20s, James Joyce had got tired of both and run off with Nora Barnacle, who was neither particularly domesticated nor a harlot, but someone who had worked for a while in one of the Dublin hotels. There is, of course, traditionally in 19th century Ireland, the Ireland that both of these men grew into, a sense of a distrust of the body, a fear of procreation, really, that families would get too large to make farm units economical. And it created, I think, also a shyness about the body, which was added to by Victorian prudery, a prudery so great that people in some great rooms would cover piano legs with linen cloth because they found them suggestive. So by the end of the 19th century, the body had been thoroughly colonised and covered, as if to conceal its innermost secrets. And yet a new philosophy emerges with the 20th century, the idea of the body beautiful. And a philosopher like Wittgenstein writes how the body can be seen as an image of the perfected human soul, implying that there is no split between body and soul. And that modernist generation reconnected body and mind. For instance, T.S. Eliot would say, writing about the poet John Donne, a thought for John Donne was an experience. It modified his sensibility. You thought with, not against, the human body. And there's a rediscovery of metaphysical poets like Donne, who wrote, Love's ecstasies in souls do grow, but yet the body is his book. So the recovery of the dignified body for literature and art itself becomes coincident with the exploration of the mind through psychoanalysis. Yeats said you shouldn't just praise the bravery of a soldier marching into battle, that a person could show as deep a bravery entering the abyss of themselves. So that there must be a point at which the body and the soul can meet. And many of the new journals of psychology at the time asserted a link between thought and feeling, often captured in the idea of an image or a human mood. And this is what interested Yeats. What fascinated Joyce, of course, were the separate parts of the human body. He was, after all, a would-be medical student for some time. And he linked up Ulysses episode by episode by a kind of point-by-point exploration of the organs of the human body. But I think behind all that there was an obsession with circulation, with the idea that you can no more maybe for centuries and centuries, as people did, about the movements of stars than you do about the circulation of blood in the human body. And yet Joyce is all about circulation, the circulation of money, the circulation of blood, ultimately the circulation of persons through the streets of a city. And circulation is the final measure of health. People do find the schema of the body in Ulysses a bit rigid, a little bit too clinical. And it probably was such for Yeats, who believed that in poetry, in art, the half-said thing is dearest. And he did not overrate the workings of the analytical mind. He wrote, for instance, Yeats did, in a fine essay called The Thinking of the Body, art bids us to taste and touch and hear and see the world. And it shies away, he says, from mere brain work. And yet Yeats found unity in certain images when the actual body and the perfected soul become one.